All right, gang, this is day 3 of 3 days to crow. You are almost ready to crow like a professional. The first day, we did the check. We took ourselves way out of alignment just to check the wrists and set the balance point. The next day, we brought ourselves a little farther off the mat. Today, we're actually gonna have our knees, or the end of our thighs, on our triceps. That's where it gets a little wobbly for some people, but we're gonna make it happen. Let's do it. Day 3, get ready to crow like a champ. You may have noticed by now that your wrists can get a little sore because of this compression way back. You can always do a few little wrist stretches and exercises to get started to prevent that. That might have been nice to mention on the first day, but now you'll actually believe that it's useful. One of the things you can do really easily is just grab your fingers with the opposite hand, pull back to set tension, and then straighten your arm. Gives you a nice stretch through the forearm. Of course, you do it on both sides. In the opposite direction, you grab over the top of the knuckles, pull back, and then straighten the arm. And it gives this extensor tendon area a bit of a good stretch. You can also do kind of a modified tabletop to warm them up. So I like to set my hands down, shift some weight too far forward for a tabletop, and then kind of do some circles, driving into the knuckles and then back into the base of the palm, sometimes even turning them over. This is why I don't have a whole bunch of weight forward in a regular tabletop, because this one can get you a little sore. But I point the fingers toward one another, move around a little bit, point them back at me, and then point them out. Eventually, your wrists do get used to this pressure. It's just kind of new because we're not used to having all this weight driving straight into our forearms. Okay, let's get down to business. Your crow should eventually, textbook crow, look something like this. Heels are pulled up toward my butt. Shoulders are pulled back, not totally jammed, and I'm leading with my chest, using my head as a counterbalance to the big old butt. So a lot of times people get to this point and they feel wobbly when the weight of the knee, of the thigh, actually goes on their arm, because they're used to it being outside where they could kind of counter the pressure. So remember, talking about full stability, that little test you might have done with a friend. When the arm goes down, it's not just sitting there hoping it works. It's engaged from the shoulder through the bicep, tricep, forearm. This thing should be stable. When you put one hand down like this and wobble back and forth, there shouldn't be a bunch of wiggle in a noodle arm. It should be stable. That's just something you have to consciously keep telling yourself. Engage the arm, build a solid base under the rest of your body. Now, the connection works really well. Hopefully you can see it. At the end of the femur bone, there's one side higher, a little dip, and then the other side a little bit lower. It almost makes this perfect little spot for your arm to sit, kind of like an oarlock on a boat. So if you want to try this out, squat down this way, turn your palm up, and then set the tricep area as high or as low as you want. The higher you go, you start prepping for crane, but you can be right at the elbow if you want, and see how well it fits. It kind of clunks back and forth if it leaves that little spot, and it's kind of built for crow. From here, I'm going to leave my arm where it is, but turn the fingers over. That's really important. External rotation of the arm countered by internal rotation of the hand. So with that in mind, I'm going to do it from a couple of angles. Now we're squatting down with our knees roughly in front of our hips, and we're trying to put our elbows right on top of them below our shoulders. This is the spot we want to be in for a real crow and most of our other arm balances. So from here, set this down, turn this over. Engage everything for the arms. Set the hands down, and now lift the hips again. Bring the fingers and the palms under you so there's just a little shift left. And now, so you don't have every ounce of your body weight just crushing down on the elbows, we engage the core. So, elbows in place, triceps in place, hands in place. I lift up the buns and I shift and engage. 1 foot and then 2 foot. If every ounce of my body weight is all over these elbows, it's easy for it to fall down. So I want to engage my core to take a little bit of the weight off of those arms. All that is a matter of locking everything in place. Imagine you don't want any of it to move, as if you were sitting here and someone tried to pull your knees away. When they pulled them, instead of this happening, it should move you as a unit. If they pull your shoulders back, instead of this happening, it should move you as a unit. So this is actually a goofy looking but pretty good core exercise. All I want to do is sit down here like I'm riding a go-kart or something and engage my core. That's the diaphragm, the transverse abs, the low back, and the pelvic floor, so I can't move at all the distance from the knees to the shoulders. So as I rock, everything stays exactly where it is. If you find yourself flopping around with this, you don't have the engagement yet, and that's okay. You can learn it. So from the side, squatted down, this time knees in front of hips. Remember how wide we started? Not anymore. We're gonna bring them in. We're gonna bring our hands over, palms up, external rotation, palms down, internal with the palms, still pretty external so you can see the eye of your elbow when you look down in the arms. Now, lifting the hips to bring the base under us. This is important so my shift is really minimal. Lean forward, engage, 1 foot, 2 foot. You are in a crow, and you know you're in the crow with perfect core control if you can push off a little and not immediately crush. You should be able to hold yourself just with the core for a split second. Now that takes some arm strength, but it's just a little test that if from here, if I lift it away, could I hold for a split second? Eventually gravity's gonna take over, but it's a good little test of whether your core is there. So last time for the cheap seats. Squat down, heels off the mat, knees in front of hips, forearms go forward, external rotation, plug in. You can plug in really high at the armpits if you want, and then you're really close to this eventually being more of a crane with the arms perfectly straight. Or you can keep them bent and have the knees really high. But if you want them low, because you're just learning, it's the same difference, it's still a crow. Set the forearm or the tricep area where you want it on that little oarlock at the femur, either high, medium, or low. Palms down, hips up. Some people bring their hips up, but leave their hands. That didn't accomplish anything. Bring the hips up and the hands back. Shift forward, engage the core, lift the head, 1 foot, 2 foot, you're in a crow. I'd love to hear your success stories. If this worked for you, if you got some mileage out of it, let me know in the comments. Maybe like and subscribe to see what I'm up to next, and ring the little bell to keep in touch. Namaste.
But the whole point of the machine is to relieve you of that suffering.